to Mindwell, hosted by Michelle Jones. We are all about connecting with wellness professionals and individuals with unique perspectives about developing wholeness and well-being. This podcast is designed to help you reconnect to your core self and find the resiliency, capability, and strength you already have within. Mindwell is sponsored by IntegrateTrauma.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mindwell. On this podcast, we interview people who have remarkable perspectives on the power of making mindful connections. I'm your host, Michelle Jones, and I am excited to be here with you today. One of the roles that I have professionally is that I work as a trauma educator. And sometimes that is because I'm helping people to understand their own experience with trauma. But I also work to help coaches and practitioners learn not only how to understand trauma, but how to guide their clients to mindfully process their trauma experience. So my partners and I came together with this desire to help as many people have access to trauma healing as possible. Everyone has their own unique path to healing. There's not just one right way. And so there's a lot of useful ways to process our trauma response. In fact, I interview a lot of people on the show that have different pieces of the puzzle for each one of us. And one of the things that we have done at Integrate Trauma is we've refined this process to help our clients mindfully tune in to their own experience. And that alone is a really big deal, to be able to be in the moment with what we're experiencing, and then how to safely release that intensity that's no longer needed, and to learn self-compassion, mindfulness, acceptance, and ultimately to connect to well-being. So I share this with you. Like, why does this matter? Why am I sharing this with you today? I share it with you because one of the best parts of my job is getting to meet people in our quarterly classes who have a desire to help others find the same healing that has changed their own lives. And without a doubt, the people that I meet in these classes, these students of mine, are people that have just a desire to help other people, which that alone makes them remarkable. And that I get to interact with them and to get to know and love them is really one of the best parts of my job. I absolutely love to teach, and I love getting to know each one of these students. So this morning, I'm here with two of my students, Petro and Meagan. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. And they are completely certified and finished with my classes. So coming here isn't like part of your grade or anything. So they're actually here because they still like hanging out with me. So I feel like that's a win. Is that fair enough to say, you guys?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Totally. So Meagan and Petro have completed training and certification and now work with clients. And I want to give our listeners a chance to hear about their experiences and really also what brought them to the work that they're doing today. So Petro and Meagan, I would like for you to introduce yourself and tell our listeners more about you, and tell us a little about the journey that brought you to the work you do today. So Petro, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, my name is Petro Vishnokov, and I'm originally from Russia. I'm so sorry. Remind me what the question was.
So tell our listeners a little bit about you. So obviously you've got a little bit of a journey that brought you from Russia to here where we are in studio in Tempe, Arizona, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your journey that brought you here to this point and how you came to know me and this program, and let us know a little bit about that.
Well, like throughout my life, I've experienced a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
After working with someone we both know and love, Wayne Johnson, he connected me with different people to help me along my journey. And through that, we were able to find different ways to do what we do today. So
Yeah.
it's been...
So part of the reason why you came to this work is because you've had your own experience with having trauma, having that show up in your life, and then needing a path. Like part of what I'm interested in is, well, actually, I'm going to ask that question in a minute. So that is how you came to the work, really, was by working with one of our practitioners.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Meagan, tell me a little bit about your experience and your journey getting to where you are today doing the work that you're doing.
Okay. So I've been kind of on a healing path for a little while now. I was in trafficking for a while, and that's a very lonely, dark place to be in. And healing from that was also very lonely and dark. And I tried so many forms of healing, and there was a lot of great forms of healing, but nothing was like helping me feel. I mean, I'm functioning, but nothing was making me feel like I loved life. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to love life again. And so a friend that I knew introduced me to trauma integration, and I started doing it. It was a really hard process, but as I kept working through it, it really made a huge difference in my life and made me feel so much more functional and so much happier. And just like this weight was lifted off of me. And I had kind of gotten to the point where I felt like there was no way to be completely healed from such huge trauma until I did trauma integration. And it was amazing how healing it was and how fast it was. That it wasn't something that you continuously did forever. I just, like, not to say it's magic because we're all human and we all have our struggles and life keeps going and struggling, but it was huge for me what trauma integration did. And so I, wanted to get certified myself, and I did that. And now I'm just loving the connections that I'm making. And I'm hoping to make a lot more connections too in the future with people who struggle with anything, honestly, but especially with other trafficked people out there, because I know there's a lot of them out there. I just want to be able to connect with them. So,
Yeah. It's interesting because we had Faith Robles from Dahlia's Hope on a few episodes ago. And I've got so many thoughts and questions that we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to pick one to start with. One of the things was how you just ended, how there's so many people that have been affected by trafficking and, significant trauma. And I think that would surprise most people to know that it's because I think it's, so here's my kind of observation, and I'm interested if you agree with it. One of the things that it seems like trafficking or some of these kind of, I don't know why, but I want to use the word intense, really intense, prolonged trauma experiences are still so hidden in our society. They're things that we don't feel comfortable talking about. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. It's pretty crazy to me when I find out people who have been trafficked. Like, I didn't know that about them at all. Or even not just trafficking, but so many things that people go through is so intense. And you look at their life and you would never know.
Do you think that's part of what increases that feeling that you noticed of loneliness and kind of feeling really isolated? Because here we are all walking around. So many of us, like all of us sitting in this room, have had experiences that have been very traumatic for us. And yet it's not something that we find out about people when we first meet them. So I think, at least for me, and I'm curious if either one of you have had this experience too, I walk around thinking I'm like the oddball, right? Like I'm the one who's experienced this stuff that no one can relate to, but that everyone else probably has had like a nice like TV family life, except for me, right? That's kind of like what we all assume about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've noticed about this work and the opportunity that I have not only to work with you guys as practitioners, but also as a coach myself, is that I think that this is such that experiencing trauma on some level is definitely a more common experience than most people would realize. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that seems like it matches up with what you've noticed or experienced too?
Yeah, totally. And I want to be able to find these people too, because I feel like so many of us feel so lonely. Yet if somehow we could connect, it wouldn't feel as lonely. And I find when I do connect, then I don't feel that loneliness either anymore.
Yeah. I think there's oftentimes a lot of fear, like what will happen if I share this vulnerable part of myself? And almost always, I mean, I'm sure there's exceptions, right? But a lot of times when we do that, it's actually so much more supportive afterwards than we fear it will be. I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts. Okay. I'm also interested to ask you more about, you said that the process, so that you had tried other different things to help you on your healing journey, that all of them helped like a little bit, but you still were not feeling like joy and loving life. And you came to this work and you felt that it made a really significant difference, but that the process itself was really hard. So, can you explain for our listeners, like, what makes the process, like, what about it made you like describe it in that way? Because that can feel really intimidating, I think, for people, right? Like, well, what do you mean hard? What does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
So, how would you explain that?
So for me, I feel like the hardest part was when I went into a trauma integration session. When I would go into a trauma integration session, I would kind of go back to an old memory. And when I went back to that old memory, I would bring up all these feelings that were connected with those feelings. And so I guess having to feel the feelings that I felt in like these horrific moments was really hard. But then I let those feelings go, and you get to replace those feelings with pretty much whatever you want to replace it with. And it's really hard to describe how amazing it is, but when you experience it, then you know what I'm saying. Like, I'm sure
Absolutely.
Petro totally gets what I'm saying.
Oh,
But
I do, absolutely.
So, Petra, would you explain it the same way, that through this process of connecting with your trauma, that it's hard, but then you are able to shift that experience?
No, I do. Like I've experienced a lot of different types of therapies and different ways of healing, and this is the first time I ever could feel that shift in my body. That the trauma was actually being healed. It is really difficult because you are dealing with it head on, but it's also extremely empowering because you're dealing with it head on, and it's a really cool moment to be able to look at your experience and take power over it. And
Yeah.
it no longer affects you the way that it used to.
Yeah. I think what some people worry about, considering doing this work, because Meagan, you mentioned how you want to like connect to people who are feeling lonely, people who aren't feeling like that love of life that they wish they could feel, right? Is that they hear this and they think, okay, what I don't want to happen. I think this is a common fear. And so I'm curious how you would respond to this fear. Okay. So if a client came into you and said this, how would you guys respond? I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I'm nervous that if I open and connect to these things, to, all of the feelings and sensations that I had in that moment, that I'm going to get stuck in it. And now I'm just going to feel that way forever.
I guess that's a valid concern. I definitely didn't get stuck in it. It was just like, it was a hard moment in a session, but it was one tiny little hard moment. Like you go into the session and you have a hard moment of feeling these feelings, but then it's done and it's literally done forever. I know it sounds like super magical, but somehow it is. And I'm not the genius who like made up this program. It just works. Whoever made it up is genius.
Yeah.
But
And so when you end a session, do you still carry a bunch of that kind of hard emotional stuff with you that you brought up in your session?
No, not at all. Like whatever I brought up in that session, it's done. It's no longer attached to me any longer. So, there's lots of things to work through and stuff. It's not like one session is going to fix somebody. There's going to take multiple sessions, but each session is going to do something to lighten your load.
Oh, I love that so much. Petro, did you have any thoughts about that?
Just the thought or the fear of getting stuck in it is super, super valid. Like I've felt that before when processing trauma, just because those sensations, those emotions that come up are so strong sometimes. And I'm really grateful for the different mentors that I've had who've walked me through my trauma, like you being one of them, just reminding me, and it's something that I do for my clients as well, that it's only a memory and that we're not stuck in it anymore. It's
That's
no
right.
longer happening. So like as a trauma integration practitioner, I do keep that in mind when helping others process their trauma, that it's only a memory, like it's no longer happening.
I love that. Okay, so I'm interested in what made each of you decide to make a move from your own healing journey? Because that's its own level of like bravery and courage. Like, first of all, I just want to like state that for the record. I think both of you are tremendously brave and courageous people. And because it takes a lot of courage to be willing to look at the things that you don't want to look at, right? And to kind of face it head on. And so you took that step of bravery and courage to work on your own healing journey. But then it's another step to say, now I want to learn how to help others do that. So I'm curious, like, what made you decide that you wanted to do that? Ooh, I can tell that I got them thinking.
I feel like for me, what made me decide to want to do it, I've always wanted to help people. And I've always been thinking like, oh, what can I do? And there's so many, things out there. Like I thought I'd be a fitness trainer, and I think fitness trainers are awesome. But for me, I feel like there's got to be something a little bit more, because people need something more than being in shape and feeling great about themselves. Like, I don't know, if you can heal internally, then you can heal everything else in your life. And so when I found this, I was like, this is what I need to do. When I experienced it, I just knew like, this is what I need to do with my life. So
I love that so much. And also that sentence that you said, like, the real transformation, if you can heal yourself internally, then everything else that you want to like adjust, heal in your life can come from that. I think that's super awesome and powerful. I love that. Petro, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, like you and Megan were talking about, like when experiencing trauma, it's so lonely. Like you feel like you're the only one. And just like thinking back at that time in my life where I felt so alone.
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing to be able to help other people who are feeling like what I felt, feeling lonely, like giving them that hope and the reminder that there are other people who've experienced similar things. Even if the experience is different, those feelings that you felt are very similar to the emotions or the feelings that I felt. So it's just, I love it. I love being able to do this work and be able to connect and understand others in a way that others may not be able to. So it's,
for sure.
I really enjoy it.
I really think it's interesting how you said that word connection, because it's so funny how many times you and I have a conversation and we've had very different experiences, right? I mean, we've each had significant trauma, but like in very different ways. And there's so many times when we're having a conversation and I'll say, I don't know if this is how it feels for you, but here was my experience. And it feels like we never have a conversation where that doesn't come up, where we can find this point of connection that all of us in our experiences have more in common than we think we do. And that is something that's super like comforting, I think, to realize and to feel, and really powerful too.
I totally agree. It just goes to show how actually, like, we're way more connected than I think any of us realize. Like when we're experiencing terrible things, it feels like no one will ever understand. And it's just so many people have felt the same way. And it's such an incredible understanding to have when you make that realization.
Yeah. I remember one of the reasons why I started doing this work, not that anyone asked me, but I'm going to share anyway. And since I'm the host, I get to share whatever I want. So one of the reasons why we started this company and why I particularly was really passionate about the education piece is because I didn't understand what the heck was happening to me. Like why I was having these responses, why I was having these reactions, why I couldn't just get over stuff, right? Like that felt so out of control and I felt so broken. And the truth is, I wasn't broken. Like everything I was experiencing made sense within the context of what I had experienced, but I didn't know that. And one of my thoughts was, and it's kind of been the thing that has played over and over in my head as we've developed this program and these educational courses, and then as I teach and do work, is I never want anyone to feel alone in their experience. That if there's anything I can do to help someone understand their own experience and to not feel alone in it, then that feels like something I want to be part of. Like at the end of my life, looking back, that would feel really satisfying to know that I was able to be part of something that helped other people to understand what they have experienced in their life, to feel empowered, to be able to move through, and really to recognize how fantastically capable and resilient they are. Because I don't know about you, I'm interested to hear about your experiences with your clients, but a lot of the times when I see clients, I have to help them recognize that in themselves, that they are so capable, that they're resilient, and that they have what it takes to do this process. What have you guys noticed it as you've worked with your clients?
Well, something that you said to us, Michelle, in training one time is that, as you said before, everybody is really resilient, but you said given the right resources. And I think that's really key because you can be resilient. There's so many people out there that are so resilient, who have been through so much, but still are struggling because they don't know where to turn for help. And that's something that I think is so sad. I wish there's a way to help people find healing and hope because everyone is resilient, but they just need to find what works for them. And I'm not saying this is the only way. This is not the only way to heal. There's so many ways to heal. For me personally, it was an incredibly powerful way to heal. But I think I'm getting off topic. But
No, I totally love it. And I think you're exactly right. And the phrase that I tend to say is, I fundamentally believe that every human is capable and resilient and capable of healing given the right access to support and resources. And that's like the key part, right, of that whole process. So what do you guys notice that people often don't understand about their trauma? As you're meeting with clients and they come in and they're sitting with you for the first time, what do you notice about what your clients don't understand?
So we talked a little bit about this actually at the event we had on Saturday.
Yeah.
But that sometimes people don't even really know what trauma is. I mean, the big question is, did they experience trauma? And I feel like people often connect trauma to events rather than an experience or the effect it had on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll come in contact with clients who were referred to by a friend, not even really knowing why they're in my chair that day, and then helping them understand what trauma is and the different ways it can affect us. It's oh my gosh, I have experienced trauma. My experience is valid.
Yes.
This was scary, but just because it wasn't in this context, it doesn't make it any less scary than it was. It had an effect on me.
Absolutely. It's almost like we all as a society have this box of 10 events. And if one of these 10 things happen to you, we all agree that that's trauma. But other things, and so if it doesn't fit in that easy to recognize category, then I think a lot of people say, it's really interesting to me how many times people say to me, I don't think my trauma counts. I don't think it counts because it wasn't, this really big recognizable thing. But I think the truth that you notice, Petro, is that it's not the size of the event. It's not what the event is, because that's in the past. We can't change that at all, right? We can't change the event, but it's all about what happened within me because of what I experienced. And that's the part that we can bring healing and change to. Any thoughts on that, Meagan?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
We were talking about, what do you notice as you talk with people or you're talking with your clients that they don't really understand about trauma?
Oh, okay. I would say that a lot of times when I'm talking with people, they don't realize how their responses are so normal. A lot of times they'll be like, well, this is going to sound crazy, or people are embarrassed to talk about how they responded to their trauma. And I feel like it's kind of sad because actually the way they responded to their trauma is totally normal. And that's how their brain was supposed to respond to trauma. And they really shouldn't be embarrassed at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would connect and even add a word like shame. I think a lot of people feel shame about how they responded to trauma because they don't understand that that's actually a normal way that our body just responded.
Mm-hmm.
That makes complete sense within the context of what they experienced, right? Okay. I feel like we've kind of talked about this, but I'm interested if this sparks any other thoughts or if there's anything you want to add, which is, why do you think this kind of work is important?
For me, I would say that it's really important for people to be able to heal from anything that their body has stored as trauma so that they can live up to be their best selves. Because whenever we store trauma inside of our body, it kind of affects us in ways that sometimes we don't even realize or don't even notice. I feel like a lot of times in relationships, we respond from trauma that has happened in the past.
I love that.
I kind of lost my train of thought from that. But
Meagan, you're doing awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Petro, did you have any thoughts about that? About why is this kind of work important?
Everyone deserves the opportunity to heal. And I feel like everyone, regardless of, or no matter what you've experienced, no matter how big you think it is or how small it is, everyone deserves that opportunity to feel whole and to not carry that load with you. It's not necessary.
I think like right along with that people need to almost be given permission to recognize that they matter and that their healing matters and that they have permission to heal after these experiences. I was thinking about a couple of the things that I think are really important about this kind of work that we do together is that, like, one of the things that I'm the most passionate about and that excites me about this work is that we enable people to not feel broken. And I think that is a really common feeling that people have. And so we help them to see their strength, their power, their resiliency. And the other piece of the puzzle that I love, because this process is so focused on like being able to be mindfully present in the moment with our body, is I think one of the things that people learn a lot is how to be in their bodies safely and how to like tune in to what do I need? What is my intuition telling me? And to learn to like develop this really positive and beautiful relationship with their own self, with their body, with their intuition, to be able to like lean in and to trust that experience. To me, that is like an irreplaceable part of feeling like that calm-centered well-being that I didn't even know I was looking for until I felt it. And I was like, whoop, we found it. This is what I didn't know I wanted. And I now have it and I love it. So that is one of the things. Okay, if you guys could create like a way to magically help everyone in the world understand one concept, like here's one thing that I wish everybody knew, I wish everybody understood, what would it be? Or maybe one of the things, right? Like that's a lot of pressure to think of like the top one thing. But what is something that you think would make a fundamental difference for people if they could just understand this one thing?
Wow, that's like a really deep question, because at first I was like, oh, I wish everyone knew that they could heal. But then I'm like, no, everybody should know that they're lovable, or there's so many things. But I do think that everybody should be able to heal and live their best life and find their community and their people that they can feel love in their community.
I love that. Petro, what thoughts came to mind for you?
That any feeling or experience you had is 100% valid, and no one can take that away from you.
Yeah. I feel like that would change a lot of people's lives if they knew and understood that one thing, right? I wish that I could like infuse, and this is a slightly different version of the question, which I guess is cheating, but like I wish I could infuse just a tiny bit of hope into every human. A hope that whatever experience that I've been through doesn't dictate what my life is from this point forward. That there is the opportunity and the ability to like heal and to like still have good things happen in my life, even though I've had all of these other experiences in my life, that doesn't like control it.
Yeah, I feel like when we're in those really dark and lonely times,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I keep losing my train of thought.
You know what? It's because you're so excited to be here with me, Meagan.
I am.
So I'm thinking that is something that, as we think about what we want people to understand, I think it kind of gets to the heart of what I see in so many of the people that are drawn to this work and to learning this process, is that we just want other people to recognize their worth and to realize some of those things. So I'm wondering, we kind of like blazed through at the very beginning a little bit about your experiences that have led you to this point. I wonder if there's anything more that you would like to share that our listeners might find like helpful or interesting that might bring hope for them. Is there anything either one of you would like to share about your experiences that brought you to this point? Because each of you have like some pretty cool things that have brought you here. I'm going to tease you guys for a minute because I gave you guys these questions last night. So that's kind of awesome. Okay, well, Petro, I want to ask you about your name because here in Tempe, Arizona, it's kind of unique. And so I want for you to share a little bit about your name and where you've come from and how you got reconnected to that.
So I love talking about my name because it means so much to me. And it makes me emotional because of how much it connects me to who I am. And that was such a huge part of my healing. But my name, so like I said in the beginning, I was born in Russia. And I was separated from my family when I was very, very young. And I was adopted into a family here in the States.
And it was when you were just an infant, right?
Just an infant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there was no one else around me who looked like me. When people see me and they hear that I'm from Russia, they're like, no, you're not. Not realizing that Russia has over 200 official ethnicities and that we all look very different.
Right.
But my name, it holds so much meaning to me. It makes me feel connected to my culture, to who I am. I actually reconnected with my family in 2019 and taught myself Russian pretty soon after connecting with them. So like being able to speak my language and be able to say my name as Petro Vishnokov, it just makes me feel so happy and just... I love my name so much.
Because Petro is not the name that you were adopted.
No,
with,
it was different. It
right.
was
right. And so one of the things as you're sharing this experience, I'm thinking, and I'm going to share just a tiny thing because I know quite a bit about your story, that part of this adoption process and kind of the after effects of it were part of your trauma.
Yes.
Experience. And so do you feel like part of your trauma healing has been kind of giving yourself permission to reconnect to what was taken?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like after reconnecting with my family in Russia, I was able to receive the other side of that story. It answered a lot of questions within myself of what happened, because I've always felt like this wasn't supposed to happen. And it wasn't. It was in unfortunate circumstances, but being able to take back what's mine really gave me a sense of empowerment and ownership of who I am, because through what I've experienced, I really lost a lot of parts of myself and didn't really know who I was.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's almost like those things got hidden. Like,
yes,
like through your healing, you're recognizing these parts of myself are still there. I just lost that connection to them and how to like connect. I just think it's a really interesting and beautiful example of this work that we do because, we can't go back in time literally and make it so that you were never put through some of these traumatic experiences. And yet, here you are today, on this podcast, having a conversation with me, feeling empowered that you are able to choose for yourself what things you want to include in your life and where you want to go from here. And that's pretty fantastic. And like, honestly, if you could rewind time back like 5 years, would you have pictured that you would have felt that empowered in your life?
Never in a million years would I ever think that like I'd ever be having this conversation with anyone, but I never thought I'd be in the place I am. Like my life was always chaos, and I felt like I had no way out. So being able to be on the other side of that, be able to speak about my experience without it affecting me the same way, and not feel like I'm holding secrets, because I feel like my life was something that I needed to be ashamed of, and that no one was supposed to know about. So it's been such a cool thing to be talking about it, and in such a different light than I have been in the past.
I think it's part of the transformation of the work that we do.
Huge transformation.
Okay, if we have any listeners that are interested in participating in this process, like they're thinking, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to help people. I've always felt drawn to that. And this work might be for me. This is something that I might want to do. Can you give them a little bit of insight into what would you share with our listeners to help them to like kind of know what to expect from the training process? What was that experience like for you guys? You guys were in different groups, so you weren't in the same class, so you might have a little bit different experience. But if you had someone who wanted to know, so what was it like taking those classes, and how would you explain it to them?
I would say it's really fun. Like, I don't know, it's not as boring as school. If you're into healing, if like you're interested in healing and stuff like that, I would totally say to take them, because you learn so much and you build such a great community, and the classes are small enough. It's really not intimidating. And you get to learn all of like the basics of healing, like how trauma affects the brain and just the way the brain works and reacts to trauma, and so many different cool things. So
thanks, Meagan. Petro, any thoughts?
It's a really cool experience. Like in the classes, I feel like you learn a lot about yourself. I mean, when I was doing my own trauma work, I felt like I got to know more about who I am. So like going into certification process, I felt like, okay, like I'm prepared for this. I know what trauma is.
Right.
And then
I got this.
This is going to be easy. Like I was able to understand a lot of the different concepts because of my trauma work, but I learned so much about myself, stuff that I didn't even really think about. And it was really cool going through that process and strengthening my understanding of what trauma is, and being able to apply that to working with clients moving forward.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear from students a lot is, I thought that I understood everything already about my own trauma experience, and I was only coming to the classes so that I could help other people. And by taking the classes, I not only walked away with the skills to help others, but I actually felt like it was a lot more healing for me too, because I was able to have more compassion for myself because I understood my experiences on a totally deeper level. So I think that you're in good company that is part of what your experience was. So you guys, thank you so much for coming. I have absolutely loved this conversation today. How can our listeners get connected with you? If our listeners really resonated with one of you, how can they find you and get connected with you potentially to work as a client? Meagan, I'm going to start with you.
So I have a website, and it's called It Healed My Soul. And then I also have an Instagram account, also It Healed My Soul. So you can look me up on Instagram, and I have a link there to my website and any information or to get in contact. Also, both Petro and I are on the Integrate Trauma website as well.
Exactly. It's like one-stop shopping to find the best people.
Yes.
So ithealedmysoul.com, yes?
It's actually -wix.com.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then Petro, how can our listeners find you?
So I also have a website, and it is www.mhpvconsulting.com. And I'm also on Instagram, and that's Instagram facebook.com/petro.vishnukov. My last name is kind of a mouthful, but it is on the Integrate Trauma website, so you can also find my link.
Totally. You can just come and click right there.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we close, I just want to give you guys a chance to share. Is there anything else that you would like to add or share that you didn't get a chance to share? I'm sure you want to say how awesome you think I am.
Definitely.
No, I'm just teasing you.
Yeah.
You know, I just have to say that I absolutely have loved getting to know you guys in our classes. I spend so much time. So we hold these classes once a quarter right now. And it's usually a small group. And in this small group, I feel like we become a little bit like a small family during that time. And we grow to just like love each other. And I have to say, I miss you guys when our last class is done. And I still continue to work with you as a mentor, but like I miss so much that energy. And that's, I think, helpful for people to know that that's the kind of connection and learning style that we are creating. We're all there like cheering each other on and supporting each other. So I would like to thank Petro and Meagan for joining us today. You guys, thank you so much for taking the time to come and be here and to share your experience.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's so fun.
So also, if you have enjoyed these conversations with us, don't forget to follow, rate, and review us on your podcast platform. It really helps other listeners find us. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on Mind Well today, the podcast that introduces you to exceptional individuals that are developing powerful, mindful connections.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Mind Well. We are sponsored by Trauma Integration LLC, a company passionate about helping people understand their trauma response and find wholeness within. You can find out more at www.integratetrauma.com.